Hello, my name is Amy Bach. I'm the Executive Director of United Policyholders. I am so pleased to be joined today on this catch-up consumer education video by David Maurstad, who has one of the harder jobs, I'd say, in the United States, being the head of the National Flood Insurance Program, which is a unique federal government-supported program under FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that is a place to go for property owners in areas that have vulnerability to flood, want to buy flood insurance. The NFIP is that place to go. There are a number of other flood insurance options today from private companies, but the vast majority of Americans who are protecting their properties against the risk of flood are being insured through David Maurstad's program, the National Flood Insurance Program. We call that NFIP. So David, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome, Amy. I appreciate the opportunity to join you.
So we're just going to go through some basics. We are going to talk today about flood insurance. Can anyone across the country buy a flood insurance policy for their property?
That's a good question to kick this conversation off, Amy. As of March 23rd of last year, there are currently 22,600 communities participating in the NFIP. So to purchase an NFIP flood insurance policy, you must live in, and the property must be in a participating community. So I'm going to recommend this a couple during we have a heck of a lot of information on our website, www.floodsmart.gov. And you can go there to find out if your community participates in the NFIP. And you can also see if you will receive discounted flood insurance rates because your community participates in the community rating system, which is a voluntary program that communities can go above and beyond the minimum federal requirements, make their communities more resilient. If they do that, the policyholders in that community receive a discount.
My organization has been doing a lot of work to help people reduce their wildfire risk, hurricane risk, requiring people to do some things to live in a community or that does things to reduce flood risk has always been part of your program. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We always talk about insurance and mitigation. And in fact, part of the National Flood Insurance Program is a mitigation grant program called Flood Mitigation Assistance, where we can work with communities in flood-prone areas to help deal with those properties that have had multi-risks. We call it multi-risk properties. Right. And yeah, you can't talk our program without talking insurance and mitigation.
Is it best to work with an agent, or can I buy flood insurance directly through your agency?
Whether you're buying a new policy or renewing an existing policy, you can buy your flood insurance by calling your agent. I recommend starting with whoever's writing your homeowners or renters or small business owners policy, or your insurance company representative. We NFIP partners with more than 50 private insurance companies and the NFIP Direct to sell and service flood insurance policies. So right now, one does have to work with a licensed agent in their state to secure a policy. If you don't have an insurance company, or if your agent doesn't sell flood insurance, again, you can go to our website, floodsmart.gov, where you'll find a NFIP insurance provider locator that will help you find an agent that's near you. It's really important to get to get the coverage that's right for you, regardless of what your circumstances are. We offer flood insurance coverage to help you protect the life you've built, and working with your insurance agent to learn more about coverage amounts, deductibles, and policy costs is always a good thing to do.
When there's an event that causes flood damage, it often just shakes people up and makes them think about it, right? Should I buy it? Should I not? What do you recommend are the consumer's main decision points when buying flood insurance?
you just have to start with knowing what your flood risk is. And so again, your insurance agent can help with that, your floodplain manager, but also the price that you pay will give you a good idea of what your flood risk is. Important to also know that most homeowners insurance doesn't cover flood damage. And so you have to get a flood insurance policy, a separate policy that covers the cost to rebuild or replace your property after a flood. And again, your insurance agent can walk you through this. You'll need to decide, like you do with your homeowner or renter's policy, as I mentioned, what the limit of protection you need for your dwelling and the limit of protection you need for your contents, what deductible to plan for. And if I could, a couple of other messages I'd like to share is recognizing that flooding can happen anywhere at any time. And regardless of where you're located in your community, you have some flood risk. Poor drainage systems, summer storms, melting snow this time of year, neighborhood construction, broken water mains can all result in flooding. In fact, in high-risk areas, there's a 1 in 4 chance of flooding during the life of a 30-year mortgage. And also, don't be fooled if you're not required by your lender to have a policy. The mandatory purchase requirement, if you're in a high-risk area, if you have a loan that's backed by the federal government, even though flood insurance may not be required for your property, flooding can happen to anyone. In fact, holders outside of the high-risk area file on an annual basis between 30 and 40% of all the NFIP flood insurance claims, and is also 1/3 of federal disaster assistance for flooding. It's really important to know what the risk is. It's the nation's #1 natural disaster. Lines on a map don't predict when and where. Again, so don't be fooled by that. 98% of all counties, U.S. counties, have experienced one or more flooding events. And we know last 20 years has shown us that climate change is fueling the intensity and the frequency of flooding events, and is certainly part of why we're having this conversation today. The bottom line is having a flood insurance policy is the best defense against damages caused by flooding. We know that people with flood insurance recover more quickly than those without it. The last, I always have to remember, last point is there's a 30-day waiting period before a policy is considered in effect. That's also good to remember when thinking about purchasing flood insurance.
That's all really helpful and very consistent with what United Policyholders is putting out to educate consumers. We always tell people, just because no one's forcing you to buy flood insurance doesn't mean you don't need it. Get a quote for an NFIP and a private policy, and if you can afford it, buy it. The lower your risk, the cheaper it's going to be. And I'm very interested in what you just said, that approximately 1/3 of the claims that come in for damage from flooding are from people who were not in a mandatory purchase area. It's just really reinforces that message that there's lots of situations that can cause flood damage to your home, and home insurance companies have been excluding flood damage since the 60s, and they are getting more and more aggressive about limiting what kinds of water damage they pay. I think it's more important than ever that people make an informed decision about whether this is an expenditure that they should be making. Obviously, affordability is always going to be a challenge, and that's life. But starting from a place of being informed and knowing what it would cost is so important, because I think a lot of people just think, very much with earthquake insurance, I'm not going to bother getting a quote because my neighbor said it's really expensive. Get the quote, right? Figure it out, because not having it is pretty darn expensive, right? Okay, so how about, I'm a consumer, I have a flood insurance policy. How do I know if it's through the NFIP or through a private insurance company? Because sometimes the policy will have a brand name insurer on it, but it's still an NFIP product. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think that my easiest response, without being flippant, is to check with your agent or your insurance company representative. They'd be the one that would most be able to answer that question. Again, there are about 50 write your own insurance companies that administer the program on behalf of the NFIP. And so they use their own paper, so to speak. They'll have their company logo on it and whatever. They're responsible for the sale and the administration of the policy, and also handling claims if they were to happen. Again, if you want to do a little more investigating, you go to our website, floodsmart.gov, and there's a list of companies there that are administer the program on behalf of the NFIP. But again, I think it's as simple as a phone call to your insurance agent or insurance company and say, hey, is this an NFIP policy or a private policy?
Great. My property has flooded. I'm fortunate that I did buy flood insurance through the NFIP. Can you give me a general idea of what it covers and what it doesn't cover?
Yeah, the policy offers two types of coverage. In fact, right now you have to buy two types of policies depending upon what coverage you need. There's one policy that covers your building, and then another policy that covers your contents. So one's to protect your structure and the other your belongings. Some examples of what's covered: building coverage protects electrical, plumbing systems, furnaces, water heaters, refrigerators, cooking stoves, built-in appliances, permanently installed cabinets, paneling and bookcases, window blinds, foundation walls if they haven't been damaged before, staircases, detached garage, fuel tanks, pumps, and solar energy equipment is even covered if it's damaged by the flood. Personal belongings, the contents coverage is your personal belongings, such as your clothing, furniture, electronic equipment, curtains, washer, dryer, microwave. So the thing that we need to be mindful of is carpets that are not included in the building would be those that would just be on top would be covered. So it's pretty comprehensive, very similar to your homeowner policy in how a homeowner policy defines your dwelling and how a homeowner policy defines contents.
Great. Okay. I know one of the things that's not covered is your temporary rent. And so that's a big one for people. And we're not going to get into whether that might change at some point. That's just a factoid. Okay. How is the flood insurance claim process different from a home insurance claim, or is it?
It's not a lot different. If you experience a flood loss, you call your agent or your flood insurance company. Some companies will have an 800 number. Some companies have an online claim reporting tool. From there, the experience is very similar to filing any kind of an insurance claim. You'll be asked for basic information like property address, the policy number, very important, brief description of the damage, when the damage occurred, to make sure that it all lines up. Then an adjuster will be assigned to help you complete your claim. Always good idea to take pictures or video of the damage and keep copies of all the documents that are relevant to the flood claim, invoices, bills, including materials that you submit to your insurance company and adjuster. You want to keep copies of those. We have a lot of detail on the claims process because it's such an important part of buying, and it's what and when the program delivers for people that have done the right thing. Again, floodsmart.gov, there's a how to start your flood insurance claim that really just step by step walks you through what needs to be done. But I think what I've given you is pretty good start.
Yeah. And again, on our website, we have all kinds of materials that guide people, but it's great getting it straight from the horse's mouth here. So the proof of loss, one of the things we tell people is that with a home, one difference between a home claim and a flood claim is your process is a little more formal with the proof of loss. There's a deadline. So it's 60 days, correct? And then sometimes you will extend it. But generally it's 60 days after the loss, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and you're right. Technically speaking, even on your homeowner policy, there's a proof of loss, but it's just handled a little differently behind the scenes. Ours, because it's our contract, government contract, you do have to file that proof of loss within 60 days. If it's a big enough event, your Katrina, Sandy's, Harvey's, we generally will extend that date depending on the size. The adjuster, again, can provide you with that repair estimate that really is the proof of loss, what the flood damage that's observed at the time of the initial inspection based on current repair costs in your area. It's important to review that estimate with the adjuster carefully for accuracy. Then you'll be asked to sign that proof of loss form. And here's what's really important, Amy, is signing a proof of loss, even if you have questions about the amount, won't prevent you from requesting additional payment if necessary. But it will allow the company to issue a payment for the known agreed flood damage.
Okay.
And then if you disagree with the estimate or identify something that's missed or is wrong, or you find additional damage later, you can still contact the insurance company or adjuster and request an additional payment. You'll more than likely be required to provide documentation to support your request, but the flood insurance company on behalf of the NFIP is committed to paying the full amount to which you are entitled under your flood insurance policy. And just because you sign that proof of loss doesn't mean your case is closed.
That's really helpful. I think that's a big point of concern for people. With a home insurance claim, you can write undetermined and you can put the proof of loss in. With an NFIP claim, it's not the same. And I hear you saying there's a reason you want to put a number in there, because that's going to at least allow the agency to issue payment. But that doesn't mean it's the final end of the trail. So that just leads me to
anything you can do to help us have folks understand that would be tremendously helpful, because it's one of the areas where there's a lot of confusion.
Yes, for sure. This leads me to the last question. Can a consumer appeal an NFIP claim decision if they think they're entitled to more money or they don't think it's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the last reauthorization of the National Flood Insurance Program by Congress really stressed making sure that there was an appeal process. We actually have a department within the National Flood Insurance Program, separate from the claims department, that we want folks to go to if they think they have a problem with their claim. We want to ensure that the family, your business, you're on the road to recovery. So if you're unsatisfied with the amount of your claim or receive a denial letter for some or all of your claim, you absolutely have the option to appeal directly to the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And on that appeal, FEMA will work with the policyholder and the insurance company to gather the facts, review the policy, and then provide an appeal decision. There's no fee, there's no cost to file an appeal. You don't need a third party to represent you, but you do have to file the appeal within 60 days of the date of the insurer's denial letter.
That is all very helpful information. I think we are very much on the same page in terms of wanting all Americans to have the financial protection they need against the disasters, which have always been a fact of life, but are now more common and more severe. And we very much appreciate the hard work that you and your agency do to try to raise awareness of the importance of having insurance for the peril of flood. I always say, in an ideal world, you'd be able to buy one policy that would protect you for whatever might happen. But we live in this world. So there is a program, and it's been developed over many years, and it's a really important resource for American property owners. Thank you very much for giving us your time and your expertise. And we look forward to continuing to work with your agency to promote resilience to flooding and to promote healthy recovery after flood. So thanks again, David.
You're welcome, Amy, and it takes everyone. We have great support from our companies, the agents, the claims adjusters. There's a lot of moving parts to this program, and we're going to make absolutely sure, however, that the policyholder is taken care of.
Thank you so much.
All right.
So wrap on our catch up with David Maurstad of the National Flood Insurance Program. Thank you so much for your attention and your time.